Thank you again for working with us schedule-wise. We try to keep it as consistent as possible for you, but had a meeting with, some of you were there, with Dr. Savage from the U.S. Interdepartmental Agency on Homelessness, and was able to have a joint meeting and with county commissioners, city council, city and county staff, and a large contingent of interested parties in the community, people who are providing service to reduce homelessness in the community. And I think it was a great event in really two facets. One is, I think the goal is to build critical mass around alignment through the city. And we know that the city doing something in the county not makes it difficult, and the county doing something in the city not makes it difficult. So our attempt, here is to what can we get in alignment between plans at the county, plans at the city, at the COC, all those things. How do we get in alignment on what those one or two things might be? We can start with that. And so I thought that was a great start today with Dr. Savage talking about the federal strategic plan, mentioning things like the ability for housing and urban development to come in and do technical assistance for what they call regional plans, which would be something that could be city and county aligned. So I think hopefully it sparks, some conversation. I know it will inside the building here. And that will continue that momentum. And of course, he's talking tonight, if you missed, at Civicon at the Rex Theater at 6:00, and that's open to the public. And then he is having a meeting with some of our, I guess I would say more of the technical experts in the field, the folks out there in the Homeless Reduction Task Force, the Mental Health Task Force. I know they are meeting with him tomorrow morning to get into a little more detail on specific applications and how they can get some things out of the strategic plan implemented. So I really appreciate Dr. Savage and the Agency on Homelessness for coming down and meeting with us. And it was made very clear today that this federal strategic plan will be a key indicator in our ability to get federal support to continue to try to reduce homelessness here. And so I think that's a very important point that was not lost on anyone there. And hopefully that is plenty motivating. I know I can speak for myself and say ordinance you may have seen during the CRA agenda after conversation, even though the first reading had passed, after conversation internally, we felt like we wanted to take back what we heard from the council and see if we could come up with something that provided some more comfort, but was also actually enforceable. And if you remember my comments before about trying to enforce, be it through a percentage of sales, is just so difficult. I mean, the state with a much larger budget than us has difficulty proving 51% food with an SFS license. So it is not easy. That's a big ask of our code enforcement and others. And especially if someone were to complain about their neighbor, not selling 30%, are we asking for access to personal, business financials, profit and loss statements from businesses around here? It just gets to be difficult. On top of all that, you can put whatever button in a point of sale system to say food or drink. It's very hard to verify. So we were saying, okay, well, how do we try to accommodate some of the concern that we heard from a couple of the council members? So what we've brought forward ultimately is saying, if you are going to be under the 150 seats that had already been established, if you're going to be anywhere from 25 to 150, yes, you can still be a restaurant and you can still utilize a 4 COP. However, you will not be given you still will have to meet the obligations that bars do meet. So it's more of a hybrid approach of within 500 feet of a church, a school, or a residential neighborhood. And so I really would be fine with this ordinance either way, whether it was originally what was proposed and has been voted on and approved, or this alternate version, which is what I wanted to get in front of council. I understand some of the trepidation was around, someone building a restaurant, using a liquor license, putting it in a neighborhood. Bear in mind, if you did 151 seats, you could still do that. You could be open as long as you want and sell liquor anyway. But if we were to have this as a more phased approach to say, all right, let's focus it on these areas where and make sure that this approach works, and then we could certainly expand it down the road. That's something that I'd entertain as well. So, as I said, this was not as a reaction to anything. This wasn't a change that had to happen. And if we go to the council meeting on Thursday and the council votes to just keep what we had already voted for and not this, amended version, that's what they prefer, then we'd be okay with that too. We just trying to, collaborate with our council and understand their concerns and see if we could, try to, meet in the middle, so to speak, on something that might cause some concern for them. So I know it's a little, as this topic always is, it's a little complicated to explain, but as you'll see in the ordinance, that's ultimately what it would be, is a little bit more of a hybrid approach for those restaurants between 25 and 150 if they're going to be in more residential areas. And one thing is the 500 feet of a church can be waived by the church's approval. The school and the residential area cannot be, but the church can give permission to waive that anywhere in the city, and they can already do that. So that's something that is already on the books, whether it was a bar or otherwise. All right, the Operation Brownsville update. We have last week's activities, 249 calls for service, up from 233. Last week, we made 6 arrests in the area. We have 9 code enforcement cases pending, and we had 28 offense reports. So that's 1 aggravated assault, 1 vehicle burglary, 1 residential burglary, and 1 commercial. So that is the update from the data we received from PPD. And again, that is just on the PPD side of things. That is not an update from the Sheriff's Department. All right. Let's see. We talked about the joint workshop. A couple other quick reminders and get to your questions. We will have, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, the Jefferson Street parking garage is going to be closed from this Sunday, May 14th, to Tuesday, May 16th, between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. daily. So it's only closed overnight. But we just want to get that word out there. If there's, anybody that, uses it at that time, service workers, things like that. And they'll have to be removed during the scheduled maintenance hours, and it should be reopened. It'll just be those 3 days and should be reopened on Wednesday, May 17th. So we're putting together a list right now of a lot of the improvements that we are making at Jefferson Street Garage. So the lights, the pressure washing, we got a lot of different comprehensive things that we put together a plan to get that facility up, looking the way that it should and being a more pleasant experience for our folks. So but anyway, part of getting that done is some closure overnight on those 3 days, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Last thing I'll update is we have 2 new assistant directors at Pensacola International Airport, Jay Tusa and Roy Remington. And Roy is the assistant airport director for planning and engineering, and he's got 18 years of aviation experience, and he's most recently served as the executive director of the Millington Memphis Airport. And then Jay Tusa is our assistant airport director for strategy and development, 23 years of travel industry experience, and most recently as the director of marketing for Explore Asheville in Asheville, North Carolina. So excited to have the 2 of them on board and staffed up out at the airport with all the exciting things going on. So with that, that is it. I'm happy to take your questions.
On the joint workshop this morning, I guess, do you have, the specific result or action that you want to come out of this?
Yeah, I do want specific action out of this, and it's why we put it together. Is something that takes a lot of organizations and a lot of people to start moving closer in the same direction. That's very difficult to do coming in front of you at a Tuesday press conference or at a county commission meeting, or that's if we want critical mass around an idea of getting better alignment, then these are the types of ways where you hear from the folks ultimately that have spent more time studying this around our country than anyone else, and are the ones that directly have impact and effect on your ability to get federal funding. I mean, that's a pretty good authority to hear from, I believe on that. And so that's not, one person here versus another person here of what's good. That's as close in my mind to an objective assessment as you can get, is to say, this is what we've seen from all over the country. And here's what we're doing, and here's what we're going to help fund. So what I hope comes out of this is, number one, starting the conversation about where we're going as a region, as a city and a county and a COC all together, what direction we're going, number one. Number two is he'll have the meeting tonight. I know he's working with the Homeless Reduction Task Force tomorrow morning. And I'm going to want to hear back after their meeting and what their takeaways are, of course. Would want to hear what they have to say, as well as the county and Wes. And I think we'll let the dust settle for, a day or two after today and tomorrow, and let everybody kind of glean their thoughts on what the next best steps are. I'm a believer in getting out in traffic on things. And it doesn't mean that I believe that we have to do a carbon copy of the entire plan or it's not successful. If we all look each other in the eye in this community and say, here are the one or two things that we can focus on, we agree on, and we know are federal priorities that'll help us fund it, I think that's great. That's a great first step. So, we're not going to wait around for perfection necessarily on this. I think what we're going to do is we're going to say, can we create critical mass about this conversation as a community starting? And so we're going to take that feedback. We're going to see what it says. Some interesting things in there, that Dr. Savage mentioned was the fact that, certainly HUD will provide and does provide technical assistance for communities wanting to create a regional type plan. Obviously, my ears perked up with that. I think that's an organization that has that kind of experience to do something like that and would have the ability to work with the city and the county and come up with something. I think that is interesting. And, there's some housing supply plans that are out there that are of interest to us that he had mentioned. So I think we're going to digest it as a group, as a staff here, let our community digest this, and then, not sit around too long, but start to have conversations about what is that best next step moving forward.
Hey, Eric, could you give us an update on the Jefferson Street Garden District project? Dan Lindeman, I'm going to mention names here, was on his socials here recently, describing a big change in the project up there in terms of parking. That the developer is not going to do the parking garage, and that the city has taken public spaces up off of North Palafox there to align them toward uses at the developers, either his construction or the build out there. Can you comment? Anything you want to update us on?
I won't speak to I didn't see his comment. I won't speak to his comment directly. I'll give you the update around that topic as best I can. That there was a lease signed several months ago in the prior administration for the Gregory Street parking lot right there at the corner of North Palafox and Gregory, and that with the developers there. And the latest update is we have asked for a 90-day extension of before that they were to take over that lease, not an extension of the total time, but just really a stay on how long until those spaces go over, mainly because we've got to get our strategy correct in parking on North Palafox to begin with. 2-hour parking is archaic. It doesn't help the people who work there, the people who live there. There's a reason communities don't put in 2-hour parking anymore. Because we've done it south of Palafox, we just haven't addressed it north of Palafox. So that was not at the request of the developer. That was at my request, that we say, okay, before we have folks at the courthouse and some of the local businesses that were using that parking lot, before that goes over to be used for construction, that they need cars, spaces for the construction to take place, as well as some hotel obligation with the potential hotel there. That I believe that's the spirit of why the lease was signed way back when. But we've asked for those 90 days, and they've agreed to that. So we're just getting through. So nothing changes in that arrangement other than that it pushes out. I believe it was going to May. Yeah, I think it would be August 1st is when those spaces would go to the leaseholder. So what I hope is that gives us enough time to make sure that we come up with some kind of plan that we'll see less impact with the business owners, residents of North Palafox, because 2-hour parking, it doesn't really work that way. So, our intent there is to go to some kind of paid parking, but that also would allow the same way we do on the south side of Garden Street is, certainly people who work there can sign up for passes and things like that. But right now with 2-hour free parking, you really can't do either one. You can't really cater to employees that are there 8 hours as well as, we just don't have that ability right now. And that's what I want to use those 90 days for.
So do you think that Gregory Street parking lot would ultimately, the city would provide it to the developer for the hotel in lieu of a garage? Or would it be a shared, or is it maybe too early to even?
Yeah, it's too early. I mean, I think that I'd have to look at the exact lease term length. I want to say it's 7 years, but that time has already started. But my understanding of the intent, again, I'm speaking for a previous administration, but my understanding for the intent was that they would need it not only for the kind of the construction, the transactional part of building, a large building, but also that it would meet some kind of, parking obligation for the hotel. But given the fact that it's 7 years, I don't know that the plan, I can't speak for the developer if the plan would be to build structured parking after that, or if they would do it right after construction. We're not sure. It's probably, as you said, probably a little too early to speculate as to what they will or won't do. But that is my understanding about the original lease when it was signed, is to be able to meet those needs so the construction could take place. And it's something we've talked about in many topics. And Maritime Park is the same thing. It was $18,000 a space a few years ago. Now it's $34,000 a space for structured. So, I'm sure that factors into what can and can't be done.
Any update on the
No, I don't have an update, but happy to get have someone shoot us an email. I'll get Chief Craner to get you the latest on that. But I don't have one currently.
You guys are definitely people skate after hours and skate parking.
Yeah, so we're assessing, what's that like with anything. I've mentioned this, a good parallel is the day use marina that our intent is to open on May 24th or 25th. And we're still tracking towards that. But, we have, there's a lot of people that go into a day use marina. It's the PPD, Parks and Rec, the port, Public Works. There's so many folks involved. And so we've kind of got out in front of that one to make sure that when someone, we have our best foot forward when we use it. Obviously, like anything else, you're going to have some growing pains with some things. And how do you balance the enforcement of the closure of the park, but also have it lit for the security of the park and how it's used after it's closed. So that's a little bit of the double-edged sword we're in right now, but we're working on it today, as a matter of fact. And then again, we'll be back with you with some updates of how we can best have harmony between being able to use it and what that looks like, and also be able to secure it.
Mayor, are you tracking usage over there? Do you know how many people are using it? It looks like there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, probably no other way than you would be, figurative, going by and taking a look. I don't think, it's a little difficult the way it's aligned and accessed to have a head count, so to speak. But that's why we're meeting across many fronts. We're Parks and Rec, Public Works, PPD, because there's a lot of parts to this. Can we change the lighting in there to be motion after a certain time? Can we, what would be our enforcement, with PPD? What would there be, what would they be taking on? Obviously they're across the street, but you got to be out in your car and out across the street. And are we having someone go there at closing time to close the park down? How do you close a park that didn't have a gate funded? And do you want a gate? Do you even want a gate in terms of a, beautification? So, these are difficult things. I think that's why we're working through them. And, as I said, we're intentional about getting that done.
Mayor, on the budget process, where are you there?
So we've had, if we haven't had all our preliminary meetings with our departments, I'm talking as an administration, the city administrators, myself, I believe we've had all of those initial meetings and kind of had some discussions. So now next phase would be us getting together as administration and prioritizing those things. But compared to where we were before, we have had those initial meetings with all of our city departments that are bringing their requests and their priorities forward. And so now we've got to internalize, a lot of moving parts to that. So we've got to internalize that. I got quite a big binder to go through that I've been going through right now. And so we'll, make just some decisions before it goes to council about, what's important to us and what we have to focus on and, what might have to wait till next year.
Have you got a revenue figure from the property appraiser's office yet?
I have not, but that doesn't mean I haven't heard it. Doesn't mean that Amy LaVoy doesn't have. I don't think Amy has received that yet either. So we'll check on that. Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right, guys. Thank you so much.